so incredibly blessed by that demonstration of love for daddios, which we had this morning from the kids. It must be quite something, mustn't it, to be in the same building with your kid where they are actually saying something hopefully positive about you. That 3 seconds before the card turned round is a moment of suspense, I guess, but at the end of the day, I think most fathers here got off scot-free. A very strange thing happened to me this morning, but this morning it suddenly occurred to me that I wasn't sure whether if you're a grandfather, you should be sending a message of Happy Father's Day to your sons. But I did. This one was the first time ever I texted my son and son-in-law to say Happy Father's Day. It was a weird sort of thing to do. And Father's Day is weird for many people anyway. Those of us who got off scot-free this morning when the cards turned around and discovered you were either funny or vaguely embarrassing or slightly lovable and cuddly, or you were the soft option, you gave away all the toys, are still, for many people out there, something of the exception. Fatherhood has been incredibly politicized in this last 10 days or so. There's been quite a lot in the press and in popular society, who is father? What is the place and the position of fatherhood? The social justice unit which Ian Duncan Smith runs put out a report last week, the social justice unit, and I think they were telling us that something like 1 million kids around the world, around the UK rather, are without fathers. I saw a stats from Fathers Against Injustice. By the way, are there any fathers for justice here? I was going to say, if you are, this is the time to do your stunt. I'll give you 3 minutes for your time. Okay, so Fathers for Justice were suggesting that something like 3.8 million kids don't have a father in the house. And so this is a time for some of us in this building, I imagine, where the cards turning around, if it was us, doing it to our dads might be a bit difficult, because there can't be a collection of people of this number and not have those of us for whom the issue of fatherhood is very contentious. So is it the case that the absence of fathers in the home really creates havoc for the kids? That's been the debate over the past week or 10 days. Or is it, as some people are saying, no, it's not to do with anything to do with dad's present or not. Actually, it's about poverty. Do kids live in poverty, or do they have both parents of both genders around? What is the nature of the debate? And in the middle of the raging debate, I was talking to a friend of mine, a guy called Patrick Regan, who runs a superb youth ministry across London called XLP. And Patrick said, well, whatever the conversation is out there, from what I know, all the kids I see who are into gang and guns and knives, 75% of them do not have fathers. And this is a reality for a lot of people out there in the UK as we sit and enjoy the benefits and blessings of fatherhood in this building. And it's worse than that. It's because very often, even where there are fathers around, it's not particularly helpful to a lot of people. Something like 375,000 children witness violence in the home. Roughly 1 million women each year report some kind of abuse, sexual, physical, emotional, psychological. And so what you have is the absence of fathers and the presence of fathers who sometimes may just as well have not been present. And this is a very serious issue for Britain and for many parts of the world. So what do we do do, of course, we turn to the scriptures, because that's where we have good examples of fatherhood. Well, actually, you don't. You don't. Father Abraham was an interesting example, because he can't have kids by his wife. His wife says, "You want to borrow my maid?" Hagar has a baby, and then Sarah chucks her out. Strong father. So was Abraham a good role model as a genetic father or not? What about King David? "Oh, I'm running. Why are you running, David? My son's trying to kill me." Good father. So the problem we have is that even through the scriptures, it seems difficult to find a model of a man in a house who is a good father. Jacob, Israel, has 12 of them. He buys one in a Armani suit. His name is Joseph. And give the rest something from T-Mart or something. So, what do you do to find positive models of fatherhood? So let me talk about how I became a father. Well, not in detail. About father. Somebody texted me this morning, and he asked me a question. He said, "Dear friend," he's a pastor. I think he's preaching on Father's Day today, and was probably hoping to get some help from me. He said, "Dear friend, happy Father's Day. Would you please send me a comment on one thing you learned from your dad? Preferably a good thing that you now equally do. Please, and thank you. Have a great Sunday. PT." This is my response. My dad was a very bad example of a dad. The tragedy is that I still think about it and still try to use it. It's my story. Joel. I left my dad in Jamaica when I was 8 years old. I don't have any good memories of him, actually. I tell you the memories I have of my dad was as a wife beater, abuser. In fact, the reason I'm here, I may have said this in this congregation already, the reason I'm here was because when I was 6 years old, one morning I woke up to discover that my mother had fled, and I mean fled from Jamaica because of the abuse and because she had an invitation to join a couple of her sisters here in the UK in the late 1950s. I can still remember the sound of my mom being beaten. I remember waking up to those sounds. I can still remember thinking, and this is an incredible thing for a child of 6 to be thinking, I can still remember thinking, if I was a man, you would be dead. Remember that? So my memories of my dad would amount to a wife beater, a liar, something of a womanizer. I didn't know that until many years later my sisters told me. And the two things I remember about him, the two most generous things about him, was that he used to come home on a Friday night with his bicycle laden with cheese from his workplace. We used to wait for cheese. And the only gift I can ever remember him giving me as a kid was a wooden sword painted silver. Easy enough to do something like that if you're a carpenter. Just a spare bit of wood in the corner, grab it, shape it like a sword, paint it silver, bring it home to the kid. Always happy. Or is it? So, when my dad died, I may have been about 30 or thereabouts. I cried because it didn't mean anything to me. When I got a call and it said, "Your father has died, has passed away," I thought, my father has passed away. My father has passed away. My father has passed away. So, didn't really mean much. So imagine, age 27, 28, that I am now a dad. Carol and I have 2 kids. She had them. I take the credit. We have 2 grandkids. I was terrified about being a dad. Terrified. One, I had no role model to go for. Secondly, by this time, I'd been working in the probation service for about 2 or 3 years, and I'd seen the wrong side of what happens to kids, particularly black kids, in the 1970s and then into the early 80s. So when I thought about being a dad, quite apart from the trauma of labor, which was so difficult for me, the thought of bringing up kids was just weird. It was weirder than the idea of having a mortgage. But you know that first feeling when you have a mortgage and you think, whoa, I've got a mortgage, until of course you discover how much you pay back for 25 years. It was a bit like that. Being a dad, my goodness, what? Being a dad. My day started quite early this morning, and so I had a ride from a cab driver. And coming back around about 8 o'clock this morning, my cab driver and I were talking about fatherhood. And he said, oh, it's the first time for him that he has had a Father's Day. He said this morning his wife woke him up and said, Happy Father's Day! And he said, I thought, blip, 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 me, a dad. These are words I couldn't say to myself or to you. But the thought for him of being a dad was like, what? I said, how old is your kid? He said, oh, like 8 months old. Understand that freshness of vulnerability and uncertainty, and am I equal to the task? Is any dad equal to the task of fatherhood in the 21st century? I ask you, I'm not quite sure. And how do you do successful fatherhood? Which manuals will you read? And you listen to the right sermon? Have you gone to the seminars? Or do you want to do like I did? You know how I became a father? I learned it from my kids. I had to. I didn't know where else to look, frankly. One of the things I learned was that I suddenly understood why it is that in every family we only have 2 kids. The first one gets a rougher deal than the second one. Because on the first one you're experimenting. You're overreacting. You are having palpitations every time the kid whizzes past the door with an edge. By the third one you're saying, Salabi. Half an hour to the hospital. It'll be okay. So you learn. The first one gets it in the neck. The second one gets it less. The third maybe, and so on. I had to learn. And that's because all good fathers learn from their kids. I learned a mass of lessons about how to be something approaching a decent father from my children. Let me tell you one of the lessons I learned. I think the first lesson I learned was an involuntary lesson. It was that the world does not gravitate around you as a person. You cannot be a good parent and you cannot be a good dad if you think the world is about you. Because as every parent knows, within days of these little angels arriving, your sleep is disrupted, your meal times are disrupted, and it seems after 2 weeks that these people have been here forever. Forever. And so you cannot be a good dad and be an egotist. If you still think the world revolves around you being a man in the house, you have made a bad mistake. Because egotism militates against someone who is going to pour themselves into somebody else. More of that later. So I had to learn that at the age of 27, 28, the world did not revolve around me. And that I was going to have to learn to be a more patient person. If fathers and mothers learn nothing from their children, they should be learning that you have to have patience. Why is this thing crying at 3 o'clock in the morning and will not stop? And maybe for the first time, I began to understand why it was so easy for someone to slip into child abuse. That scared me as a dad. That scared me as a dad. I was looking at cases, court cases, where my job was to go and visit somebody who killed their child. How do you kill your baby? You kill your baby because of pressures, because of no support, and because you probably still haven't learned patience. You can't be a good dad without patience, really. I think another lesson which my kids taught me was this, that they have their own boundaries, and those boundaries need to be respected. And that was an interesting series of lessons for me too. It came to a climax once because one of my definitions of child rearing is having smaller people than you who you can tease and whose food you can steal at mealtimes. That was one of my definitions of fatherhood. You know, one for you, one for daddy, one for you, two for daddy. Those were my ideas about parenting. And then one day, my son, we were at spring harvest together, and because I love to tease my kids, it's still a habit I have. And the word embarrassment does crop up in my family. I remember once my kid, Joel, was walking about maybe 4 steps in front of me. He discovered another friend at spring harvest. He must have been about 9 or something, probably 10. And walking along in front of me, and I was being stupid. I was teasing him there. I thought he was, I needed his attention, not his mate, because, we'd been okay in the chalet before this young guy came along and took over the conversation. So I'm walking these steps behind him, and I'm talking all kinds of nonsense. And Joel stopped, and he looked around, and he said, "Not now, Dad, I've got a visitor." So I still tease, but it's with very great care, and I check whether they have visitors first. But the lesson was, you can't just crash into your kids' lives. They have boundaries too. And being a father doesn't mean that you have sovereign domination on the emotional space of your children. That somehow you've got to find out and respect their boundaries. Maybe a third lesson? They taught me about priorities and priority of family life, and playing and time. In our house, we never said it to anybody, but you could never get me on a Thursday because that was family time. Even if Carol was working nights, as she often had to do, and I had to hold the fort and do the stuff and play the silly games on my own. Family times are important. Thursday nights, Saturday mornings were like sacred moments. If you wanted to assassinate me, for many years, until recently, Carol seems to have released me from Saturday morning shopping. But if you wanted to assassinate me, it was really easy. Just stand outside my front door on a Saturday morning and coming out with the kids to go play some games in some park or something. The whole thing about time was so important. And priority. So, 2 examples. On one occasion, Davina, again, this time rather, had gone out. She'd been on holiday somewhere, and I'd been out preaching somewhere else. And we both came back. I picked her up at Walthamstow Central, and I said, "Hi, Davina, how are you there?" "Hi, Dad, good to see you." And so I said, "Davina, I just want to tell you, I'm going to have to nip away this afternoon because there is a meeting I have to attend." And she looked up at me. How old was she? I don't know, 8 or something. It was really quite tiny. And said, "I've just come back. You've just come back. You're not going anywhere." And I said, yeah, okay, so let's leave that. So later on at home, I got dressed, I was ready for the meeting, I was on my way out, and the minister said, where do you think you're going? I said, I'm going to this meeting, I told you, it's a really important meeting. She said, "What kind of meeting is it?" I said, "It's a big meeting, Westminster Central Methodist Hall, a lot of people will be there, and I promised the organisers I was going to be there." He said, "What are you doing there?" I said, "Well, I'm actually not doing anything, but I just kind of promised I would come, because it's a really important, big meeting." So she said, just tell them you've got kids, they'll understand.
Come on.
So I ran up. And I said, I'm really sorry, I know I promised to be there, but I really can't make it. I need to be at home with the kids. And the guy said, yeah, that's all right, I understand. My daughter was right, they understood. Here's the more serious one. I'm not sure if I ever told Joel this, I may have done. I used to work full-time in the probation service, part-time as a pastor, 3 nights a week running a Bible school, couple nights a week and most weekends, as a kind of secretary to a music band called Kanos, a really good band.
Yeah.
You say that just a bit louder.
They were okay.
Yes. And then one night I was dashing out somewhere to do my job again. And I said, I'm really sorry, people, I really don't want to go. I'm so sorry, but I have to be out. And Joel said to me, well, that's all right, Dad. That's all right. And I thought, it's not all right. It's not all right. I don't even want to go tonight. I want to be here with you guys. It's not all right. You know, that statement made me go part-time in the probation service. Just that statement.
Yeah.
It's all right, Dad. And I thought, it's not all right. It's not all right. I want to tell you this. You cannot replace time. You just can't do it. My kids are in their early and mid-30s now. They still talk about me being at home on a Thursday night. They still talk about the stupid things we did in the park. Because time is important. Here's the last thing they told me. Respecting your kids is crucial. I don't know how this started, but in our house, we used to have assemblies. And it meant that at any time, either of them, if they were not happy with our parenting, would stop the house. They would say, time out. We don't like what you guys are doing here. We want to call an assembly. And they would stop us. They would call us into assembly, me and Carol, and they would say, we think this and this and this about this place. Give an account on yourself. Now, I don't know. I don't drink, so I couldn't have been drunk when that rule came in. I don't do drugs. So we have no idea. Was it the kids somehow hypnotizing us? I don't know. But it seemed to have worked because somehow they picked up the notion that they really are respected for who they are. Now, I'm still learning about parenting because in this new phase, when your kids have kids, you find that rather than graduating, you have gone back to learning all over again. How do you not repeat to your kids the things your parents said to you and saying, I told you so? I'll tell you how I think. It's by probably understanding a very important biblical hermeneutical principle about parenting. I was wondering if I should use the word hermeneutical, because it sounds a bit show-offy. But that's what I'm doing. If I learned it, you learn. Hermeneutics is really the principle of interpretation. You know? So if your hermeneutic about God is love alone, then everything about God you see is about love. If everything you know about God, or your hermeneutic for God, is judgment, I don't want to spend too long with you, frankly, because that's all you see about God. Yeah. Judgment, judgment, judgment. Your hat, your trousers, you do what you said, what you didn't say, where you go, you didn't go. Judgment. And God's going to get you. And He's going to get you again. So, that's your hermeneutical key. So what is the hermeneutic of parenting? I was thinking about this last week. And I wonder if the problem for us as fathers is that very often our hermeneutic, our key, our way of interpreting what it means to be a good dad is about control. Because the masculinity of fatherhood is something which is very deeply resident in each of us. Fatherhood is about control. Control the woman, control the kids, control the universe. That's what guys do. Guys are masculine and muscular in their parenting. And who wants to be a weak, wishy-washy wimp of a daddy-o? We want to be strong and powerful and dependable. Therefore, there is consciously very often and subconsciously a hermeneutical understanding that we are powerful guys in the house. So we control everything. What time you in, what time you out, who did you talk to, where did you go, what are you looking at? Control. And control freakery dominates and identifies a lot of fathering models. When you relinquish control, it really can set you free. Because I believe that the biblical hermeneutic of fatherhood is nurturing. Remember a young man who was getting married a few years ago, saying that he was trying to work through what headship means in his house. He was really agonizing about this. And he gave me a call. And he said, I'm trying to work out what headship means because I think it means being in control and being responsible for the house and being the guy who makes the decisions. And my fiance isn't quite seeing it like that. And, what do I do? It reminded me of Mother Bell. Did I ever tell you about Mother Bell? Mother Bell, as a wife of Bishop Bell, who used to be in charge of coaching.
Yes.
And Mother Bell said, in our house, Bishop Bell is the head, and I am the neck that moves the head. I didn't tell you that before. So I said to this young man, imagine if headship means you're the guy who makes sure everybody else is doing well. What do you think about that? What if headship means you're the person who nurtures everybody else to be the best they can be? What do you think about that definition of headship? So it means there's a lot of negotiation. It means that very often you have to sink your ego as a man. It means that very often you have to kind of reorientate your whole understanding of fatherhood. A friend of mine was saying this week that maybe a lot of fathers have to deconstruct and emasculate fatherhood in order to be a biblical father. God is almighty because He is the Lord of armies, all-powerful. God is a rock because He is dependable. God is eternal because there is no evaluation of His beginning, middle, or end. God is a father because He nurtures. And so the very idea of fatherhood is a profoundly biblical one. Father Abraham had many sons. And many sons had Father Abraham. Oh, I am one of them, and so are you. So let's just praise the Lord one time. Okay, so we're into the second. What makes Abraham the father of many nations? Was it because he had a superior sperm count? Doubt it. Necessarily. Had a tough job just squeezing out. What's his name? So Father Abraham is the I just heard what I said.
And it's on tape.
Father Abraham is the father of many nations because he, through faith in God, believed the promises of God, and through a quality of belief, He has given birth to many nations. In you will all the families of the earth be blessed. Genesis chapter 12. And this is why Judaism, Islam, Christianity regard ourselves as Abrahamic covenants, Abrahamic faiths. Because from Abraham's faith, we have drawn faith. And this principle goes right through the New Testament itself. Fatherhood, based on a biblical hermeneutical key, is therefore a lot to do with God's ability to nurture. So here comes a Bible text or two. Fathers, Colossians chapter 3 and verse 21. I gathered some of you were probably getting a bit worried about me by this stage for not quoting the Bible text. Do not embitter your children, or they will be discouraged. The scholars think that the carryover from Ephesians 6 and verse 4 is what we see here. Fathers, some people say parents, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. And there is a kind of a tension there. Don't exasperate the kids. Bring them up and instruct them. So it feels like bring up instruction means lick them. Tell them what to do. Make sure that you are the man and they behave as you would have them. But I wonder, that word exasperate is an interesting word. The same word is conveyed in 2 Corinthians chapter 9 and verse 2. For I know your eagerness to help, and I have been boasting about it to the Macedonians, telling them that since last year you in Achaia were ready to give, and your enthusiasm has stirred most of them to action. It's that word, stirred them to action. Would you believe that the word exasperate and stirred is basically the same word in the New Testament here? Let me tell you what I think we are learning. Good fathering means knowing how to stir up your children, how to push them, how to encourage them, how to maximize their potential, but you don't overdo it so you exasperate them. That's a subtle balance. So bad fatherhood is couldn't care less, don't mind what they do. If they want to do it, let them do it. That's bad. Bad fatherhood is saying, your grandpa was a doctor, I'm a doctor, you will be a professor of medicine. And although you want to be an artist and play music, you will do it over my dead body. That's exasperation. Fatherhood is a fine line between coming around your sons and daughters, working out what is God doing in their lives, what is their gifting, what are their natural abilities, how do you push them on the edge so that you never allow them to be sloppy or second class. You maximize their potential, but you never exasperate them by pushing them to be what they are not. There was a lovely tribute this morning, wasn't there? Was it something like, my dad is who he is? Well, he's himself. But maybe the kid's been parenting the parents. I can't remember who that was. Was it you, Doug? Sorry, I forgot. But I think that's it. How do you let your kids be themselves in God? talent, be themselves with their ministries, be themselves with their sociability, be themselves with their level of academic attainment, and never push them over the edge. I have a nephew who was home taught in Jamaica, still in Jamaica. He's 19 years old. He is teaching at the University of the West Indies. Now, you could say that's slightly freakish, but here's a guy with incredible potential whose parents have learned how to push him to the edge, but not push him over. And God is our Father because He will not let us be like somebody else. God will push you to the nth degree of your ability because He knows who you are, what you can do. He knows your potential. He knows your limitations. He knows your giftings. He knows the extent of your abilities and the limitations of them. And God is that kind of God who, through His Word and through the fellowship of the saints and through the work of the Spirit pressing in our lives, pushes us to the limit, but never exasperates us. May God raise up fathers. You may have had a beautiful model of dad. You may never have met him. Yours may even have abused you. Yours may be your number one idol. But may God raise up fathers who nurture.